All right, we are back now here with you on the KFYR Plus News Desk. And President Trump's spending cuts and border security package would inject roughly $150 billion into his mass deportation agenda over the next 4 years, funding everything from an extension of the U.S.'s southern border wall to detention centers to thousands of additional law enforcement staffing. The big, beautiful bill could change the U.S. immigration system altogether. Joining me right now is an immigration attorney with more than 14 years of experience, including serving as an attorney advocate at Harvard Law School's Immigration and Refugee Clinical Program. Let's welcome Susham M back here to the news desk. Welcome, Mr. Modi. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me back on. It's an honor to be here again.
You got it. So can you kind of give us provide maybe an overview of the key components to President Trump's immigration bill that is in, of course, the big, beautiful bill?
Sure. You're correct. There's a massive amount of funding, and it's on the enforcement side. So you're seeing a huge amount, over $40 billion on the border wall, another huge amount allocated to ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Those are the deportation officers. And then what you don't see a lot of funding for is immigration judges. It's on the due process side of things, and there's huge backlogs of cases in an immigration court, often taking years. So that was surprising. And you don't see a huge amount of funding for USCIS officers. Those are the immigration officers deciding like naturalization, citizenship cases, or green cards, marriage-based green cards. But on the enforcement side, massive amount of funding.
There's been a lot of debate to this, a lot of misinformation. What legal rights do undocumented immigrants have while living in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, first, they have the right to due process under the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Number two, what we've been seeing with the raids on immigration courts, people doing it the legal way, is they're trying to find individuals that have been here for less than 2 years, because then they could potentially be expedited removed, meaning removed without seeing a judge. So that's what, and those are individuals who are doing it, trying to do it the legal way, and so then the judge may dismiss the case and remove them. But if you've been here for more than 2 years, you may not be subject to that expedited removal, and you have more rights. That's number two. Number three, even if you are subject to that expedited removal, there's international and national law that if you're more likely than not to be tortured, if you're going to be returned home, you have a right to what's called a fear interview, and then your day in court if you pass that. So there's still rights there. And then, of course, there's other rights for a vast majority of individuals, whether they need to apply for like a marriage-based green card if they qualify, or other applications, or change of statuses, etc.
What are some of the implications of expanding the network of immigration detention facilities? As you probably have heard, the Alligator Alcatraz. I mean, that's just kind of scary, isn't it?
It is terrifying. I mean, what we're talking about here is human dignity, too. I mean, this was created in a matter of days. There's all kinds of issues going on currently with overcrowding. There's been lawsuits against like medical issues, like not having medical treatment while in immigration detention, not having proper food. And the Alligator Alcatraz, the pictures show, I mean, no privacy whatsoever. It seems to be all just fenced up. And so there may be massive issues with basic human rights that civil rights lawyers need to take a look at and see if it's violating basic human standards.
What does this do to the backlog of immigration courts?
Yeah, that backlog, like I mentioned before, is likely to increase significantly because not much funding was given to immigration judges and USCIS officers. Just to take a step back, if we look at what's happening now, like for example in Houston, a lot of places across the US, it's taking about 3 years or so before your final hearing, your final trial. That's immigration court if you're not detained. If you're detained, they have to adjudicate cases in less than 6 months, according to a Supreme Court case called Zedvitas. That's going to be incredibly difficult for immigration judges to do if detention, like detained individuals, are going to increase, but not immigration judges. Really scary there to see if they're going to have enough time to really review each case. On the other end of the spectrum, even if they're not detained and they're applying for an application, like asylum, for example, that goes to a USCIS officer first, affirmatively, that's already taking 6 to 9 years, and not much funding was increased there either. So the areas where there needs to be increases hasn't happened. The other thing I want to talk about here is the funding. So this is now making ICE the most powerful law enforcement agency, more than funded than the FBI and other agencies. Yet, since the Trump administration has taken office and there's been a records request, so these are just facts, about over 75% of the individuals that have been caught and detained of undocumented immigrants have no criminal convictions whatsoever. So not only are we increasing the funding, we're not utilizing the funding to go after those with actual criminal history. Instead, it seems to be a numbers game.
So what ethical concerns now are associated, Susham, with the rights and treatment of these immigrants, both documented and even undocumented?
There's a lot of concerns. So, I mean, first is the detention concern. You know, if more individuals are going to be detained, are they being detained in humane conditions? I mean, the Alligator Alcatraz, just the name alone, and you know, it doesn't seem like we're using human dignity. But then, is the actual facility meeting minimum standards for medical and other issues? Now, if we take a step back, a lot of people say, well, they're illegally here. What rights do they have? Well, every person has a right to basic food, shelter, etc. So, and then even undocumented children, they have a right to go to school. That was Plyer versus Doe, a Supreme Court case. So there are rights. There's the Fifth Amendment right to due process. And then if they have an ability to stay or relief in things, and they're not a flight risk, or like we talked about, vast majority of them have no criminal convictions, then they might be able to be bonded out. But then to be able to even apply for that, how overwhelmed the immigration judges may become, is going to be a whole nother issue of other rights. And then lastly, we're seeing a lot of even more extreme measures being taken by the Trump administration. So you've heard about the recent Supreme Court case lifting third-party country deportations. So that's incredibly terrifying, because those countries can be like Sudan or Libya if they have a final order of removal. And then also there's other lawsuits going on with different types of human rights issues involved, including the Abrego Garcia case.
Mr. Modi, we get one side of the argument where you say, well, you know, we all know that Mr. Trump was running on this. He was looking to stronger border. But then you also have, conversely, the public opinion. What is the public opinion on this bill that you've seen so far?
I think a lot of people may be unaware of exactly how much enforcement funds are going to be taken to make ICE the largest enforcement mechanism. I don't think the border wall is a good use of funds. It's actually going to further gang cartels, because if it makes it harder to come to the U.S., you have to understand what people are going through just to come on an already treacherous road. So if that road becomes more treacherous, like underground tunnels and things, it makes the gangs actually more powerful. There's books on these issues. Number two, I think additionally what's happening here is the Trump administration first campaign, to answer your question, on going after criminals. But again, over 75% have no criminal convictions whatsoever. A big misconception under the law are they're illegal. They are criminals. That's not true. Immigration is civil law for the vast majority of individuals, not criminal law. So, for example, they don't have a right to a free lawyer under the Sixth Amendment if they're detained and put in deportation proceedings. They have to pay for their own lawyer or represent themselves. So it's not criminal law, it is civil law. I think a lot of these terms have been politically made to frame the argument and get people riled up on both sides. But that's not that's actually happening on the ground, from the attack on student visas to immigration court hearings to individuals trying to do it the legal way with temporary protected status or parole. Those individuals trying to do it the legal way and going through fingerprinting and biometrics and background checks, it's those that are trying to be taken and held in ICE custody and deported because they're trying to ramp up the numbers. They're not actually going after the tougher individuals with criminal history.
Historically, how effective do you think this bill is achieving its stated goals?
I think it's to be determined, but I don't think it's going to achieve the goals, because if the goal is with the Trump administration to go after more undocumented, or they frame it illegal, they didn't actually fund the immigration judges or the officers to adjudicate cases. Instead, it's going to potentially overcrowd detention facilities, and the quick ones that are being made, like Alligator Alcatraz, we'll see if there's lawsuits that may occur for those individual detention facilities because they don't meet basic human standards. So that's to be determined. So I think it's an inefficient use of funds, and you're also may see a further backlash with the public. You started to see it with the No Kings movement, but where 5 million individuals across the U.S. were protesting, and I think most of those signs were actually against ICE raids, because individuals are seeing those raids happen in Home Depots, churches, schools, where these individuals don't have any criminal history. It's their friends that have been here for a long time or trying to apply the legal way. And so I think that's where we're seeing a big backlash. And if you're going to fund ICE is about 3 times more than last year alone, then you may see a further increase. I think you're likely going to see a further increase of these sorts of ICE raids and maybe more public backlash.
What would be your recommendation for undocumented immigrants to ensure the safety and well-being of their families, especially if they have U.S. born citizens, citizen children?
They need to do a consultation with a good immigration lawyer to see what rights that they have to apply. Depending on their case, they may be able to apply for something and then apply for work authorization and be able to stay. There's many different paths. Number 2, if they are under an ICE raid, there's all kinds of cards, know your rights cards, but they have the right to remain silent. If the raid happens in their home, they have a right to ask for a warrant. They need a warrant to enter. So for the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizures of the home. Even at workplace raids, depending on if it's a public part of the workplace or a private part, they may need a warrant there as well. To be able to have emergency contacts if they do get detained. Don't sign anything they don't understand. Sometimes you see ICE officers say, hey, sign this, you'll get out of immigration jail. But then they could be signing away their deportation when they could have a way to apply and have their own court hearing and a full trial. So there are certain rights during the process of the ICE raid, while they're detained, and even maybe to fight their case, depending on their circumstances, with immigration court. And so that's why they'll want a good immigration attorney. And then not just to wait, too, in case that happens, but to see if they can affirmatively apply for something. We see a huge rise of cases where individuals have been here for a long time, married to a U.S. citizen. They could have applied for maybe a marriage-based green card, and they're finally getting around to it because of the amount of fear and ICE funding that it's occurred. So, and then even with green card holders, you saw on the news individuals that have little to no criminal history, like the political protests against Gaza. That individual was put in deportation proceedings and was a green card holder. So we're seeing a huge amount of green card holders that are, okay, let me apply for naturalization or U.S. citizenship because that's the best protection. Even though, the Trump administration says they're trying to denaturalize individuals, that's a much more limited scope that they can do that once you're a U.S. citizen, as opposed to a green card holder that could be put in deportation proceedings for minor criminal issues.
We've all seen the videos. We watch ICE agents move within our communities, picking up people under heavy arms and masks. The bill could even exacerbate more fear and mistrust within the immigrant communities, leading to, of course, social unrest and a breakdown in community relations. What do we do to help?
I think several things. I think number 1, they've got to know their rights, like we talked about. Number 2, people could be eligible for immigration relief. There's so many different grounds if they're afraid to go back, or if they're married, or if they have kids that could sponsor them. It depends on their circumstances. Number three, I think you are starting to see the public really say, okay, they're going after individuals that have no criminal history, my friend, my family member, and you're starting to see a massive backlash. You saw it with the 5 million people that were protesting, I think the largest in U.S. history a few weeks ago. So I think there are certain rights. You've got midterm elections coming up as well. I think you're going to see immigration be a massive issue during that time again. And then, to also monitor the Supreme Court, because although the Supreme Court has lifted what's called injunctions, they didn't actually issue decisions on the merits of cases. And certain cases, I think, are illegal, like the executive orders by the Trump administration are likely illegal, such as the birthright citizenship issue and the Alien Enemies Act, which was trying to deport people quickly without seeing a judge to El Salvador, but we're not under a time of war. So I think those are going to be decisions next term that the Supreme Court's going to look at and hopefully find that it's illegal. So to monitor those news decisions as well and how it could impact them and their family members.
What do you believe is the most critical aspect of this immigration system that needs some reforming? And of course, does this bill even touch upon any of those aspects?
I think number one, it should prioritize, if you've already increased ICE funding, which they have, they should really prioritize criminals. It's the first time again that they haven't done that. And so that's scary. I mean, you have limited resources, even with the expansion of resources compared to how many undocumented immigrants there are. Wouldn't you want to target the individuals that have the worst crimes? That's not what's being happened. Seems to be a numbers game with raids at Home Depots and churches and even kids at schools. So that's, one, inhumane, but two, not a good use of resources, and three, doesn't make the United States safer. So I think that's number one. If we've already funded ICE, why are they not prioritizing the criminals? And these are not just comments. They've done a records search from the Trump administration taking office to now, and it shows objectively that 75% have no criminal convictions. So I think that's the first thing that we can advocate for if the funding has already been issued. I think number two, you're right. I mean, there should be basic standards on them not wearing masks, ICE officers identifying themselves so they know individuals aren't being kidnapped by like imposter ICE agents, for example, and being able to locate their family members and be in actual like humane detention conditions where people have basic access to just basic food, shelter, and medical needs. So those are, I think, the things that need to be looked at more carefully. It's going to be really terrifying to see how many court cases may come up with this additional detention without enough immigration judges, and how judges are going to handle that to try to give people the due process that they need. So that's going to be another terrifying aspect.
Is there any final advice or thoughts that you'd like to share with some of the viewers regarding the potential impacts of this new legislation?
Yeah, I mean, I would say because enforcement is ramping up, it doesn't mean that you don't have a potential relief. So to really, immigration is federal law, it's national law, to really talk with, even if it's not us, a good immigration attorney to see what your rights are. So you're not just, working reactively. Because if someone's detained and put in deportation proceedings, then you may have less rights to apply for certain applications. Like the judge might not give continuances. They're under more pressure to get a detained case done faster, according to that Zedvitas rule against indefinite detention. So the case could become more expensive and more difficult. So to really see what your rights are beforehand, to proactively work on it. And I know a lot of people could be under fear, and so they may want to be more paralyzed or not work, to think about it. You see that with asylum cases. A lot of individuals may have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because of all the horrible harm they went through abroad. But let's to not wait would be the best advice to get a good consultation with an immigration attorney, because the case can become much more difficult if you do wait.
The old saying is things get worse before they get better. Do you think things will get better?
I'm working on this every day. I see new and newer policies really affecting people in a harmful way, and we're trying to do our best to advocate for people, and we're doing a pretty great job in the circumstances that we have. That being said, you start to see, okay, where's people advocating for basic human rights for other people, to not be tortured, not be sent to a third country like Libya or Sudan, where they might get tortured, or extradited to the country where they're going to get tortured, like what happened with the Supreme Court case from Guatemala. So, you start to say, okay, why are people not seeing this, or reacting, or helping their fellow humankind for basic rights? But what gave me hope, is those 5 million, individuals, mostly U.S. citizens, advocating for individuals to have those rights under, against these raids, against individuals with no criminal history, against the Abrego Garcia issue. You saw people really stand up, and it was, I think, the largest protest in U.S. history a couple of weeks ago under the No Kings protest. So do I think things are going to get better? Yeah, but it's going to take a lot of action like that from people who care about their neighbors. And you start to see church groups stand up too, for basic morals, humanitarian morals. I mean, Catholic Charities, Lutheran Immigrant Services, to show, this is not the way faith and basic human standards should be done. And so I think there is going to be a change for the better. To answer your question, things get worse before they get better, because it's showing people coming together in a community and advocating for basic standards. So I am hopeful. In the meantime, though, there's a lot of work to be done for people on the ground.
Mr. Modi, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for your insights. Have yourself a great afternoon, sir.
Thank you for having me back on. You too.